Hello, this short lecture will be on quantitative research design. So the aims for this lecture is to define quantitative design and define and discuss different quantitative designs, that the more common ones that you will come across. So what is a quantitative design or approach or paradigm or methodology? So you'll often hear those words used a bit interchangeably, so don't be too worried about that, but it's first of all, before we get into the definition, it is deductive, and you'll have seen from the image that is on the module that quantitative research designs are deductive. What that means is it starts with a premise or a hypothesis or a proposition or a question that then goes out to sets out to answer that question or test the hypothesis, that sort of thing. It's different to qualitative design in that qualitative design collects the data, sees what's there, develops the theory at the end, whereas quantitative design starts with the theory and goes out to test it. And then they may need to adjust the theory as they discover that the data doesn't quite fit the theory. So that's where what makes these two designs or the two approaches quite different. Now, quantitative research is the systematic investigation with a controlled design using precise measurements to obtain an answer to a research question or test a hypothesis. It's really that simple. The thing about quantitative designs is they set out, it's a bit like a recipe, I suppose, or sometimes I've described it to students, if you think of the two paradigms as like going on a journey, the quantitative journey is that you start out with you've got a road map, you've got an itinerary. It's like one of those bus trips that people go on. So you know where you're going to be for lunch every day, for dinner every day, you know where you're staying every day. Quantitative research is supposed to be controlled so that you don't get extraneous noise, if you like. So other things coming in that may bias your research. So quantitative designs have a recipe. The qualitative roadmap is a little different. That is where people, theoretically get in the car, you've got an idea, you're going on a journey, and you just go, and wherever you get to, you get to. Whereas quantitative is much more structured and controlling so that you can get precision, and the methodology exerts a lot of control to make sure that your results are as good as you can get them, basically. So when we look at how a research study is designed, this is sort of the way in which it might be done. So you'd identify an issue, you develop a question, review the literature, develop the framework you're going to use, formulate some variables. Now there's another lecture on variables which you can go and have a listen to. Then you need to design the research by select your actual research design, identify the setting you'll do your research in and the sample, the people that you will be taking that from. You'll need to select data collection methods that support what you need to find out, and you need to make sure that any of the tools that you're using, if they be questionnaires in particular, that you evaluated them for reliability and validity. Then you go on to conduct your research. First of all, you need ethics approval, so that has to happen after the design phase of any research study, qualitative or quantitative, in humans and animals, and that's very important. And the next module after this module is actually on ethical and cultural considerations. You then, after you've received ethics approval, you go out and recruit your subjects, and there's rules about how that's done. You collect your data and you move on to the analysis phase. At that point, what you're going to do is describe your sample. Who are these people? Who is this group that you looked at? You're going to analyse the data, answer the questions, interpret the results, and then you'll move to the utilising your research or getting it out there effectively. So what you're looking to do is recommend any further research, state the implications for nursing, disseminate your results via conferences, research papers, that sort of thing. And most importantly, look to see whether your research is ready to apply to the clinical context. And then if it is, apply it. So the reasons that you would choose a quantitative design is that you want to look for causation or causality, and you'll hear those words quite a bit, or you want to be able to predict something. You want to do an exploratory a piece of research, which is often done prior to doing a predictive piece of research. Sometimes you don't know enough about an area, so you do an exploratory piece of research. Descriptive, where you go out and describe. And explanatory is to explain why something's happened. So the types of quantitative designs you'll hear people talk about are basic or pure, and you'll often hear people, you know, in sort of the hard sciences, they often do more basic research or pure research, say in maths and things like that. And that is related to theory generation. So when we think about some of the famous physicists over time, they've done quite a lot of pure research. Applied research looks to undertake research that will be able to be used in the clinical context. And so it's that clinical research to underpin evidence-based practice or evidence-informed practice. Now, research can be done, isn't always done all at once. So sometimes you can look at so cross-sectional will be data collected at one point in time. You can get longitudinal designs where there's several points over a longer period, and something like another one would be a pre and post test, so that you do a pre-test, you apply an intervention of some description, like you might give someone a treatment and then you do a post-test. Now, or it might be you do a pre-test, give somebody an education package of some description, do a post-test and see if there's any difference. Now, further, as we drill down into types of quantitative designs, we've got 4 here, and as you can see, there are lots and lots of types. So, there's many more types than this. What I've just put on here are the ones that you're likely to see more commonly in the nursing research, and the ones that you'll hear about. So, descriptive designs, which you can see is part of a non-experimental, which means that we're not doing anything to anybody. So it's really descriptive designs are used to develop theory, identify problems in practice, for example, or justify current practice, make judgments about things. But the problem with it is that it can be superficial in a way, and it's it's an extensive rather than intensive analysis, and you may not always, and you're not looking to predict what's happening here. So you may not be able to see all the picture. In the case of correlational design, you're really looking to examine a relationship between 2 variables. So you might be looking to say, well, when pulse rates go up, during an exam, you're looking at the relationship between, you might want to look at the relationship between stress during exam time and blood pressure or pulse rates or something like that, okay? And you'll be looking to make some kind of comment on the relationship between those variables. That can be useful in a range of situations where you might be looking at 2 variables in terms of a treatment and the outcome, you know what I mean, where you're not looking at causation, but you're looking at the relationship between one thing and the other, and so that can be useful in nursing. I guess, it examines the strengths or the weaknesses in relationships, but it can't. For example, you could do a study on smoking and lung cancer, but because it's correlational, you can never establish causation. But it is useful in gathering supporting evidence. Now, the two experimental designs that I've got here on the page are quasi-experimental and experimental. We'll start with experimental here. So experimental designs are basically the gold standard in research designs. They're the randomized controlled trials that you hear about, or RCTs, those sort of thing. So what you're looking to do, is where the researcher has the greatest amount of control. You're looking to show cause and effect, so these are predictive, or causality, causation, whatever word you want to use, they mean similar things in this context. What you're looking to do is, if I do X, then Y will occur. So, that sort of thing. If I give an antihypertensive, then I expect to see a mean drop in blood pressure, that sort of thing. And so experimental designs, the experimental design has three properties: manipulation, control, and randomization. So they have a control group, which means that they have two groups, or at least two groups, where one group receives, say in the case of a randomized control trial with a medication, the group A would receive the standard therapy, and group B would receive the experimental therapy. Okay, so the treatment or the manipulation is the new therapy, so it might be a new antihypertensive drug or whatever. But what you're looking to do is you're looking to get a group with as many similar properties between the groups. So sort of average blood pressure is going to be the same in both groups. You're looking, and you've got to try and get similar things going on there. Then you're looking to have randomization of subjects. Now that's where it becomes difficult, and that's why the quasi-experimental designs were brought into place, because it gives you the capacity to look for causation in situations where complete controls, for example randomization, are not as possible. So it's much more practical, feasible, and in terms of it's cheaper, because sometimes research is expensive. That's the other thing. So it's important that that sometimes that you do a study and you're not going to be able to have complete control. The problem is you can't completely establish cause and effect all the time. So what we've got here is there are two types. We've got experimental designs down the bottom and non-experimental designs up the top. So in summary, quantitative research is deductive in nature and uses precise measurable data after starting with a pretty robust recipe to get them through the research. This type of design sets out to answer a specific question that they've developed from a theory or a proposition or a premise, and by doing that they are able to maintain rigor and control in the situation to get the answers that they need to.